What's going on, y'all? We are here to debut a new show, Assembled, where we dive into different topics around the comic book movie genre. This time, we really wanted to talk about animated movies, guys, because animated movies, animated shows, it has really saved the superhero genre from burnout. I mean, listen, we've got the MCU, we had the DCEU in that mess. Y'all remember that? Now we're headed for the DCU. Don't get a reset there. But animation has stayed strong throughout all this. Think about it. We've had Spider-Verse. We've had Batman the Animated Series back in the 90s. We had Batman Beyond. I mean, we've just had animated properties continuously coming out. And now modern day, we have Invincible. We have My Adventures with Superman. We have all of these animated shows and movies that are continuing to drop, y'all, and are just keeping the genre alive, guys. So we wanted to come together, have a great conversation about that. Y'all let us know what you think down in the comments. And if you're on the replay, be sure to subscribe wherever you're seeing or listening to this particular show. Give us a good thumbs up, reaction, review down in the comments, guys. But without further ado, we're going to jump right into the conversation, y'all. Mike, let's start off with our first objective: history of superheroes making the jump from comics to other mediums.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, superheroes been around for almost 100 years now, right? Going back to the late 30s with Superman and Batman and Captain America. And one thing that I thought was always interesting is how fast that medium that of storytelling made the jump, right? It went from the page to radio shows with Superman, right? That's where we got faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, right? Because they had to describe how Superman's powers and abilities worked. And then we, in the 40s, got those Fleischer cartoons, right? Those Superman shorts, which is like the first real jump. We had Batman serials too, but those are low-key a little racist. We won't talk about those. But Superman makes the jump into animation. And Christian, I know that you reviewed those on your channel before too. If you want to just talk about how, even to this day, those still kind of hold up a little bit, right?
Yeah, so that was actually my first time witnessing or even watching those Superman shorts. I was able to get a hand on the Blu-ray, and I didn't really know what I was getting into. I just knew that they were super old, and they started in September 26, 1941. The first one episode titled Mad Scientist, Superman Mad Scientist, and ran from 41 through 43. So I myself am not like the biggest Superman fan, but I acknowledge and understand why people love Superman so much. And I think when this came out, it was like almost like the unofficial mainstream push was like, hey, this can work. It can literally be from a page of a comic book ripped out onto TV screens like around the world. So when I was watching them, I don't remember specific episodes, but I do remember the animation. I was like, this is actually not this is higher production than I would have imagined something of animation that's this fluid being released in the 1940s. Yeah. And so there were some shots that I do specifically remember where I was like, wow, this is actually it came out like on Blu-ray altogether. They touched it up a little bit, but the color correction and just the animation, the hand-drawn animation itself was pretty cool. And I can't remember how long each short was. I would imagine they kind of just played these in between like maybe two other major program shows that were coming out around the 40s, because
I'm pretty sure they were theatrical releases. So how Pixar would put like a short, you get a short before a movie. That's what these were. That's what
that makes a lot more sense, actually. That's actually pretty cool. I do like that. And for people who want that collection, it's out there on digital platforms like Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, stuff like that. But and I didn't realize that this was like the first like real push for animation to become what it is today, because I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, like I said, Superman's not my cup of tea, but from what I remember reviewing it and just watching it, I was like, these are actually like pretty fun adventures. They're, I want to say maybe no more than 10 minutes if that's,
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong, but it was quite the experience. I think this is like the oldest piece of media outside of maybe Citizen Kane that I've like gone out of my way to watch. So it's pretty cool to go back in time to see how it all began.
Yeah, for sure. And seeing the evolution of that, right? I love how that was literally a comic book come to life. Like we were saying before stream, right? Like Cliff, you were talking about like Superman literally punching bullets back away from like Lois and saving the day. And it was the testament of how powerful that character was. Not just that he was blessed to be one of the first like animated shorts of all time, right? This is Steamboat Willie, Snow White, Superman. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And that is insane to think. But even going through the timeline, right? In the 70s, we get Batman and Robin, we get the Super Friends, we get Spider-Man and his amazing friends. Shout out to Firestar, who gets no love nowadays. But superheroes have been in animation all that time ever since. And I think what makes it special is that really is a comic book come to life, right? We're going to just jump to the 90s. You get the DC animated universe with Batman the Animated Series. And I feel like what those Fleischer shorts did for Superman, the animated series did for Batman, where it's just like, hey, we're going to throw Bruce Wayne into random scenarios every single episode. And it is probably still the best interpretation of Batman to this day. And of course, you know, we get the Teen Titans later on. We get various versions of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like they made a career out of being an animated series. And all up to this point to today where we have Invincible, X-Men 97. We have Batman Cape Crusader. We have My Hero Academia this year alone, right? Shout out to Lemillion, the number one hero. But I feel like in animation specifically, superheroes have made a living because it's the easiest comp to comic books. It's almost one-to-one in that sense, but it's when we get to live action where things get a little interesting. And I guess that's when I'm going to get off the soapbox and toss it to Cliff, and he can talk about live action superheroes.
Yeah, so by this point, and specifically we're talking, you know, once we get to Blade with that came out in 1998 and X-Men came out in the year 2000. By this point, I think it's safe for all of us to say that, like, in terms of live action, superheroes were not that popular. You know, we had a few things here and there. We had beautiful Christopher Reeve's 5-film franchise. We had, you know, Michael Keaton. Exactly. We had Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson doing a couple films. We even had, you know, a slew of other Batman actors come in and take over the role. And we even got to see Dick Grayson, shameless plug, I have to do it at least just one time. You know, Chris O'Donnell played him a couple times. But yeah, by this point, we're now starting to see, you know, movie studios take a larger interest, I'll say, in superhero production and superhero adaptations. You know, as I mentioned earlier, X-Men 2000. Eventually, we got, you know, our biggest hits in, you know, 2002 with Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man 2. You know, we got our Ang Lee Incredible Hulks. This for, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually, the year 2008 came, which for some reason was arguably one of the most defining moments in cinema history and comic book adaptation history, where we got not only just The Dark Knight Returns, but we also got Iron Man, which was the start of the MCU, or as we like to call it, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe in full respect.
The death of cinema if you're Martin Scorsese.
That's true. Yeah.
It's turned into theme parks now. Remember.
Hey, this is true. But yeah, we got those movies, and I don't know why, but they just hit. Both movies, not only did it give us what we could say was and I hate to put it in the way of like a more serious take for some of these characters, but it finally put respect, I'll say, on these characters' names, that hey, these things matter. You can tell great stories with these characters. You can tell great, interesting stories. You can showcase great villains, you know, arcs and this forth and so forth.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just started a boom where now, which is crazy, like we're close to almost 20 years later now, where it's just like superheroes are just kind of the hottest thing to make now in movie production. You know, how many superhero movies do we get a year now? Or did, you know, we get like maybe 8 movies a year, you know, 4 from the MCU, maybe a couple from DC, and then we get our offshoots, maybe a Hellboy remake, a Sony picture, or in the case of this video, we get a beautiful animated movie like Into the Spider-Verse or Mutant Mayhem, and so forth and so forth. So, and it was just a very interesting time, and just I recommend if anyone's just a fan of cinema and just a fan of comic book lore, take the deep dive and just learn about this history. It's crazy. For all of us on this panel, we were kids, seeing this. So like we literally got to grow up with a lot of these changes and just see like the first reactions to a lot of this.
It's interesting talking about the superhero boom, right? Like Leo, I have a question for you. What was it about that window of 2006 to 2008 that made this all just like really take off, right? Like we had X-Men: The Last Stand, which was The Last Stand. It's not great, right? But like we get Spider-Man 3, but like we had a successful Spider-Man trilogy. Spider-Man 3 again, not great. But what was it about Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Iron Man that really just like opened up the floodgates?
I think what it was, I mean, Christian Bale did something with Batman even darker that we haven't seen before. You know what I mean? It was something that I think as Batman fans, we really craved to see. We really wanted to see Batman in that style. We also, man, Iron Man, you think about it, you're like, okay, wait, there was like that cartoon back in the day. Like, okay, we'll see what happens with this. And then it happens and it's just like, oh, just like Cliff was saying, it's like, oh, you can actually tell solid, great stories with great practical effects, by the way. I mean, Iron Man, if you look at it now, looks phenomenal still, with amazing visuals that can translate onto the live action medium very well. Not that Spider-Man didn't come before and do some great work, not that X-Men didn't, but Iron Man was kind of that defining staple that when it started the MCU, it just showed like, wow, you could have an iron suit. Wow, this dude could fly to the sky and it looks believable. There were just ways to make these things look incredible, make them look incredibly believable. And to the point of The Dark Knight, same thing. I mean, it's like, hey, you could have Batman rolling around in his Batmobile and it feels real. Like it just felt all the more real, I think. And so it translated to people being able to connect, to go to these movies, even if they hadn't read comic books or seen the animated properties. It allowed a bridge and a gateway for people to come into this genre without having done any homework.
Yeah, I think especially in Iron Man's case, it also probably helps that it's a new character for the general audience, right? Like nobody knew who Iron Man was, but like Robert Downey was just so charismatic and like you took to him so easily. And he was kind of a bad boy too in this era, right? Where it's like we had Superman, which of course, famously the Boy Scout. We had Spider-Man, especially those Raimi movies. Love them. But again, it's echoing that Superman the movie type of vibe to those films. And Robert Downey, like the first time you meet Iron Man, like he's a prick. He's sleeping around. He's drinking. He's doing all this stuff. He's like, oh, this guy is kind of a bad boy, even more so than Batman, because Batman, it's all a facade, right? It's like, no, Tony's just like that.
Yeah.
It kind of blows up in his face, literally, which is kind of the whole point of the movie. And I think that's what made people take to it, right? Where it's like, okay, this is a new character. Has an edge to it. It's different. It's funny, especially early. I hate to say it, but like pre-Disney MCU had a certain edge to it that I think made it stand out amongst all the other projects. And then once Disney took over, of course, we get the Avengers and all stuff like that, which is a completely different beast, which I guess, Christian, that's where you can jump in. The Avengers changed everything. What's that about?
Honestly, it's one of those lightning in a bottle experiences where it's like, this is literally sink or swim. Marvel at the time, or I guess you can say Disney, took a massive leap where it's like, okay, it was a more contained universe back then, but they're like, hey, we're gonna have like X, Y, and Z superheroes. We're gonna have the Hulk. Hulk's gonna have his own movie, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. We're gonna take some of these Marvel properties, see how people respond to them. Obviously, Iron Man was just massive. I remember seeing that. I think I was in high school when the first one came out. It came out in 2008. Yeah, so I was a sophomore in high school. And yeah, it's one of those major experiences that like it's like a big bang that just kicked off like the entire mainstream trend, where you have like, I mean, even looking at this, it's like when I saw this in theaters, I'm sure for everyone else, especially this iconic, roll around shot here, it's like, oh my gosh, like what happened? Like what happened to like the Matrix X like style, like X-Men movies and things like that, where it's like everything's dark and gritty. This was a little bit more playful, and it's like, oh, we can appeal to both audiences, well, with it being live action, but giving it that comic book sense of humor and the dialogue kind of written in. And honestly, I think Josh Whedon's writing in that first Avengers movie really kind of catapults it for a lot of other superhero movies that we've seen in 2024, like everything in between. But there was something special about it where, like, that iconic shot that you guys just played, that doesn't really happen until like halfway through the movie. It's like this slow little build up, but it was a theater film, but it also felt like a TV movie at the same time in some spots. So it was kind of this weird hybrid where it all just
Is this
works.
a good thing or a bad thing?
I was just about to say.
I don't know. I guess it
think it's
depends
a
on
great
who you
thing,
ask.
actually.
Because looking, like, if I rewatch the Avengers now, it feels more like a TV movie. But when I saw it in theaters, it's like, when you're a kid, you're not really thinking about that stuff. But it was just this amazing experience that it proved that comic books could work in live action in the modern day going forward, for better or for worse. We have some duds in there for sure, but it's all about experimentation and figuring out what works. And what Marvel found, it still works, beside popular, despite popular belief, some people, naysayers, saying the MCU has changed. It definitely has, but back then it works, and it still does. It's just on a larger scale now. But back then, like you only had to watch like, oh, if you watch Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, and Captain America, you're all good to go. And it's like, oh, okay, it was this nice little build up where it's like we've never seen this many superhero characters live action before, like in the same movie. It was kind of crazy to think about.
Arguably, you didn't even need to watch those. Like, I knew some people who just went straight into Avengers and
That's
enjoyed
true.
it. I mean, if you vaguely even know the characters, like,
yeah,
come in.
I mean, it popularized those characters, like you guys were saying. It's like, like Mike was saying, nobody knew who, like Iron Man was, at least to me, it was like a C-list, like Marvel superhero.
That's
it was
generous.
really,
I'd say he was a D-list.
Right.
Well, I mean, growing up, it was like X-Men, Spider-Man. Like those were like the two biggest like Marvel properties. And it's like Captain America was there. People like the Hulk, but I feel like the first Avengers movie like started to popularize the lesser known Marvel comic book heroes who weren't just like as relevant as they are today. It's kind of crazy to think about, because I was like, Captain America. Like when I was younger, I was like, I didn't really care too much about him when I was a kid, because it's like, he was kind of just there. But it's like, yeah, like I want to watch like the new X-Men or Spider-Man. Like that was like the thing. And Disney kind of did this whole 360 where it's like, hey, we have all these other heroes. And they've really I think they've done a great job with bringing their characters from the Avengers onward, like into the limelight.
Cliff, you said that you thought it was a great thing that the Avengers kind of felt like a TV movie. I want you to explain your perspective, because Christian was still like, I don't know.
Yeah, so let me break it down real quick. Here's why, like, I love me a good TV movie, and like I just love TV because a lot of people, they like to, and I'm sure all of us here, like, we could probably name off just in general like 3 shows that we love to watch, and we just think, hey, in terms of writing and filmmaking, top tier, right? And that's kind of how it is with me when it comes to like TV movies as well. There's I think the best way to describe it is they essentially did an episodic lead up to this grand finale. It's something that the Universal Monster universe kind of did. Is this sort of like crossover event, team up kind of situation that, at least for outside of animation, in terms of, you know, the Spider-Man shows and X-Men and even Iron Man, those shows in the 90s, and the DC animated universe with, you know, Batman, Superman teaming up, Justice League, Unlimited series. We didn't get that in live action for a long time. Like, we got so many solo adventures. You know, if we look before Iron Man, we got Elektra, Incredible Hulk, and so, you know, Fantastic Four movies where it was just self-contained. Even Daredevil, you know, with Elektra popping up in that as well. But before that, we didn't really get that many crossovers like this, unless it was in animated form, or if you were just a comic book reader at the time, which I personally wasn't. I didn't start reading comics until 2013, so like I was extremely late to the game and what have you. But yeah, that first Avengers movie, it just feels like we are watching the finale of episodes, essentially, to like this limited series. Almost, it feels like
it was like a season finale,
and you don't have to watch it. Yeah, exactly. It's a season finale, and it's a season finale that you don't even have to watch the prior movies to get. Like, I didn't watch the first Captain America nor the first Thor movie before the Avengers movie dropped. Like, I was just specifically Iron Man and Incredible Hulk. I did not care about Steve Rogers or like the King of Thunder. I did not care. I cared about Chris Evans because I was a fan.
I didn't either. It's okay.
Exactly. I knew Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson from Nanny Diaries. Like, they're doing indie movies. That's what I know them from.
Yeah.
So I had no clue. Like, the first Avengers movie is what made me a Captain America fan. That's what made me a diehard. So it was just it was you know, lightning in a bottle moment just in cinematic history, if you will. So when people say they describe it as a TV movie, I'm like, yes, that's one of the main reasons I love it, because it's just something that feels like you can watch it on the big screen or you can watch it at home and still have a great, beautiful experience and just watch arguably one of the most iconic, well, in comic book world, it was iconic, but in terms of TV and movies, we're watching one of the first like iconic moments of a team up of a large group of people just coming together, and it's such a beautiful moment. Like, shout out to 2012.
That was such a great point in time, though, because like I remember watching the Avengers. Like, I don't remember how old I was. I had to have been like 14, maybe, watching the Avengers, and one of the best moments was just them interacting with each other. And that's how you know this was a much simpler time. It's just like the fact that I'm looking at Cap and Iron Man talking to each other blows my mind. And then it gets it gets heated, right? When he's just like, everything special about you came out of a bottle. It's like, oh no, he did not just throw that shot at my king, right? No. Steve Rogers didn't freeze himself for 70 years for this BS. You know, and it's like, that's something that I think the MCU can't recreate, unfortunately, where it's like the idea of the crossover was so unique and it elevated those movies because it was special each time it happened. Now we expect it. And so by the time you get to Spider-Man No Way Home, it's like, it's cool seeing the Spider-Man interact. It's something I never thought would happen, but it's also like, I'm not surprised that this happened. You know, I think that's like the last time you get that magic of, I never thought I'd see Tobey Maguire talking to Andrew Garfield. And I don't know how many more times you can recreate that type of magic anymore, where it's just like, yeah, the Avengers are hanging out with the X-Men. That's cool, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I
Unless
think
you're the
Deadpool and
Arrowverse,
Wolverine
like 5 times.
Yeah.
We'll
I think you kind of got that with Deadpool and Wolverine. If you're like a big Deadpool fan and you like those two teaming up in the comics, it was like really good for people who were big fans of that duo. But yeah, it's like, what else can you really get? I guess once we get to Secret Wars, it's like, oh, hey, we finally got Hugh Jackman and Tobey Maguire together. Like, I guess that's kind of what you could do. But it's like you were saying, we've already experienced that adrenaline rush of, hey, we've had these universes cross over. Now, when you have the older ones cross over, it doesn't hit as hard. But it still is cool to see like Wesley Snipes' Blade walk on screen, like into a modern Marvel movie. It's cool to see those moments, but it just doesn't have that same. And there's only going to be one Blade. It doesn't have that same chemistry. So, man, I don't think that Blade movie happened, y'all.
No, not at all. It's true, though.
It's happened.
Especially with Ryan Reynolds pushing the propaganda of get Wesley Snipes back. It's like, dude, sit down. Stop it. You're not helping.
No, seriously. I mean, I think Leo said it best, where it's like, I'm not sure if it's like a trend now in the film space where it's like, oh, you know, Marvel has their own universe now. Every other studio is trying to do their own thing. You know, there's the Monsterverse, obviously. DC was clearly like unapologetically trying to just catch up to Marvel at that point. But you know, you have all these other universes like the Annabelle universe, and everyone started in the. We were supposed to get some kind of dark universe, weren't we? I can't remember.
Yeah, it only had the
That
mummy
was-
movie.
That's right. Oh my gosh. So it's like everyone was hopping on this new trend. And I think Leo said it best, where it's like, you know, nowadays it's so common for crossovers, not like for superhero movies, but like, you know, and this is a little bit out of pocket, but like the Timmy Power Hour thing that happened, like a Cartoon Network, and they did a crossover. It's like stuff like that when we were kids, like blew our mind. Like I know that's not superhero talk, but just when it came to crossovers,
Listen,
it's like
the Crimson Chin
rarely
is the greatest hero of all time.
For real.
or like
I mean, basically.
but like, you know, crossovers in general are like when we were kids, they were so rare. Like whether it was comic books, you know, Nickelodeon that with the Timmy Power Hour, they had the iParty with Victorious, with like Carly and Victorious crossing over, the Sweet Life. There's like Hannah Montana, Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, and
That's so Raven.
That's So Raven. It's like that was so big to see because it's like, oh my gosh. But now with superhero movies, it's like, oh yeah, so and so's. It's just so normalized now that I don't know what else you can really do to get that adrenaline high back. Because I don't want to say it's peaks, but it's like maybe just plateaued, possibly.
I think that's what leads us to the next topic of conversation, and I'll ask you guys about it. But first, you know, like Tyler in the comments is saying, RIP the Dark Universe. This is the only time we ever got these people all together. 2017 to 2017. All right.
I was so excited for that movie. I was ready.
I forgot they had one more movie. They had The Invisible Man. They had that one come out in 2020, and that was pretty good.
Oh,
Invisible Man was actually
That,
good.
The one with,
it was like a solo. Like that's just a one-off. It's like
You're
this
right.
is just a great movie.
With Elizabeth
by itself.
Moss, that one?
Yeah.
Like we can't go
Yeah.
tether
Yeah.
that into the bad with the mummy.
Seriously. But
Yo, we
yeah,
forgot about one universe, guys. We got to mention one more. The Sony Spider-Man universe.
The Cinema Punk or whatever it's called.
sit down. Get
The
that out of here.
SMP or something like that.
I've
I
never
can't
heard of this
remember.
thing.
No, we don't
It's-
talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
There's things we don't talk about.
That's why we
Bruno,
don't talk about
politics,
Bruno.
religion, and the Great Pumpkin, plus the Spider-Man universe. All that ruled out. No, we're not talking. Nope, we're not talking Dark Universe anymore. We're moving on.
Long live
We
the
don't
Dark
talk about
Universe.
Bruno, man. We're not going to talk about no Dark
No,
Universe.
no.
But I guess that's part of superhero fatigue, right? And I guess I want to talk about what is superhero fatigue. And I think part of it is what you were just saying before, Christian, is like the magic of you just being in the same movie has worn off. So now you need to work a little bit harder, tell more interesting stories, more complex villains, right? To kind of make up for that a little bit. Like Leo, I know you probably suffered the least amount of superhero fatigue of everybody on this panel. So I want your perspective of what do you think changed between 2012 and now here in 2024?
Yeah, as somebody who's still riding on the train hard, loving it. I can 100% admit it's the oversaturation. When you have so much stuff coming out and to the point where the general public notices like, whoa, there's all this stuff coming out. I remember back in, I think 2021, I was doing movie reviews on the radio for a little while. And my mom like called me after one of them. And she's like, is there a new Marvel movie coming out every week? Because we would just bring up like Moon Knight or Black Widow or this or that. And it was like, yeah, there's so much coming out. I think what really happened is a combination of oversaturation and then no breaks. I mean, the pandemic gave us a forced break. But if we had like after Endgame, because it's like you were saying, Cliff, with the original Avengers, it's like a TV series finale. That was like your show finale right there. That was your full series finale of like, hey, boom, this is it. This is the big finale, what we've been leading up to for so long, 10 long years. There needed to be, I think there did need to be a break in there. Even though I don't mind a break, I just think we needed a break there. And then we got Disney Plus at the same time. And we had somebody else running Disney who really wanted high quotas, a lot of shows, a lot more saturation in Marvel content. So it just spread to everywhere. And then you had the DCEU on the other end freaking out, not really knowing where to go. because they had a successful Aquaman movie, but they didn't have a successful Justice League movie. Their Batman and Superman movie technically tanked. So they didn't know where to go. So you've got one studio who has their big finale and says, okay, we're going to keep on going and we're going to give you 3 times more of the content. And the other studio was like, we have no idea what we're doing. We're going to just keep on trying to do what works. And that mix just did not mesh well with the general public. So you get things like Thor Ragnarok, which are maybe I love Thor Ragnarok, Thor Love and Thunder, where maybe it's a little too jokey, too hokey. You get Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which I really liked, but didn't quite give you the multiverse that the trailers led up to be. Then we get No Way Home, a bright, shining spot in that release. And then the rest of it doesn't quite connect with the audience as much. There's just so much coming out. There's a lot coming out. And studios didn't know what they were doing. One didn't know what they're doing. The other one was like, let's keep on pumping it out. It's just too much. It was oversaturation.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Cliff, anything to add to that point?
I agree. I do think it was a lot of oversaturation, but also it was just, we keep talking about like lightning in a bottle moments, and like No Way Home, that is another example of, this is a lightning in a bottle moment, like specifically for Spider-Man, which I think that also just talks to how prevalent and how historic Spider-Man by himself and like just his lore, both him and Miles Morales, Miguel, like just these characters, they can stand on their own. But when we have the MCU where for a lot of us, Shang-Chi, She-Hulk, the Eternals, like these are all interesting characters, but they're just being tossed into an already established format, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're not really given what I feel the proper respect and proper time to actually build a potential, side project or side trilogy, side TV show series, whatever it is. Because Leo, until you mentioned Moon Knight, I forgot that Marvel had TV shows for a second. And I think I know these things. Like I've watched these things. I've watched Falcon and the Soldier. I've watched WandaVision. I've watched Ms. Marvel. I've sat through Secret Wars. I've seen it all. But they never come to my mind when I think about just the grand scheme of how we always talk about oversaturation and crossovers and whatnot. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. There is still TV shows coming. I know more about Daredevil Born Again and I haven't even seen it yet. But that's also because of how iconic Marvel Netflix. Again, we're talking about another section of crossovers, the Defenders. I enjoyed it. I haven't gone back, but I was like, when it came out, it was lit. I had a great time watching it. And what have you know?
Hell yeah.
Time that was lit.
Yeah,
Daredevil was lit.
Listen, I was the Iron Fist fan. I've read so much Iron Fist before that show came out. I was ready to go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't get into the details of that, but
No.
to bring it full circle. To bring it full circle, it's like we've gotten so many, I'd say, unique crossover and unique team ups that now it just the sake of just showing people together does not hold as much weight for a lot of us anymore. Iron Man and Tony Stark meeting in that first Avengers movie, their conversations perfectly balance the depictions of these characters. Wolverine and Deadpool perfectly balances the depictions of these characters and what have you. Whereas now, if you're just I love Wesley Snipes, that's my boy. I know that's the reason I love superhero movies. I'm always going root for Blade 1 and 2, even 3 if I want to have a little fun here and there. But just him popping up,
buddy.
Right? Exactly. But yeah, just him popping up, it's great. But I'm if there's no real grit or meat to why him showing up really matters to not just this movie but to my experience, then it's going to be a lot more difficult for us to keep coming back to these things. So yeah, that's I guess the gist of anything that I could add to it, really.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed, and I was talking to Didge and Trayvon about this the other day, is that one thing I think that we all kind of don't pay enough attention to, and is part of the reason, is that in Phase 4, none of those post-credit scenes, none of those teases have actually been paid off yet, right? What do those rings and Shang-Chi actually do? We haven't
Mhm.
got an answer yet. What's up with the Eternals? We're probably never going to get the answer to that one.
No.
We're going to get the payoff for the Thunderbolts, I guess. That's neat. But like everything that has been teased in since Endgame, we haven't really followed up on in any meaningful way. And I think we keep talking about the payoff, right? The Avengers being that season finale, right? From phase 4 on, it feels like we've had 2 seasons without any sort of finale or conclusion or big moment. Like again, like you were saying, Spider-Man No Way Home is probably the biggest pop off and biggest moment, but that's a Spider-Man moment. That's not an MCU moment. And I think that's the problem with some of these new characters is they're being thrown into the MCU machine without much focus or purpose. Like what's the deal with Moon Knight? That's another one where it's like, I don't know where that's going. I don't know if it's coming back either. So it's like,
Miss
it's hard for
Marvel,
a kid.
Giant lizards and nothing. Like I haven't heard anything about it since. Like kaiju monsters are walking around people. Nothing.
Yeah.
Secret Wars.
See, Kang, all that stuff. Like we're not getting the payoffs we need for these
Kang's
stories. So it's
cooked.
like,
Well, yeah, King sucks.
yeah, well, we know for other reasons, but it just adds to the fire of
Yeah.
like if I'm a
That's
general
true.
audience member and say I know that all of these didn't hit for everybody, but say I did really enjoy the Marvels. Are we gonna get a follow-up with Monica and Beast? You know, like are we
Right.
gonna get a
Oh
follow-up
yeah,
with
that's
I Love
right.
Moon Knight?
I forgot about that.
Am I going to
Mhm.
see She-Hulk again? So it's like, even if they did hit a specific type of fan, that fan is still going to be slightly unsatisfied, you know?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
very
there's
true.
a lot of loose ends out there. Yeah, Miss Marvel too, with the ending of that. Okay, she finds out she's a mutant. What happens? What next?
Yeah, what
So-
does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean for the greater universe? And now we're like talking about Doomsday and Secret Wars. It's like we haven't even grouped up the Phase 4 people yet. I think Phase 4 needed to end with an Avengers movie. You needed an Avengers movie to end that phase to get these people together. Shang-Chi, She-Hulk, maybe an Eternal or 2. You don't even have to have the whole team. I mean, I'm like, dude, what happened? What happened to the team ups, the group ups? And then we were just talking about it. The charm and magic of seeing them on screen together was faded away, of course, with the other Avengers movies. But yo, it'll reinvigorate when I can see Shang-Chi interacting with the other people
Right.
in the saga.
That's the thing. They want them to fill the shoes of the previous Avengers, but they're not giving them the gravitas of the Avengers. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if Sam Wilson is Captain America, make one of his initiatives to go found the new Avengers. And it can like they don't have to fight some world-ending threat. They can fight the Serpent Society or the Masters of Evil or whatever. But it's like get Sam to go get Thor back, go get She-Hulk, go get Shang-Chi, and make
But
a new
no,
team.
Mike, that's Val's initiative to recruit the Dark Avengers.
That's the only through line that they're following through with. I think that's low-key why people hate the Thunderbolts asterisk. It's
That's
like
Elaine
okay.
Bennis's job.
And I do think it still goes back to even with those Avengers movies, the character interactions and conversations that are taking place
Mhm.
still matter.
Mhm.
You know,
Thor
because
was
Thor has
Oh,
emotion,
yeah,
Tyler.
that's
He
right.
is our emotional king. Okay.
The emo king.
Yeah. Christian,
Um,
you have anything to add?
Yeah, so for the longest time, and I still believe this is more of like a grander scale thing. I've never viewed it as superhero fatigue. I've always viewed it as just bad movie fatigue, because even if we're not talking about just superheroes movies, like if you look at like almost every single calendar year, there's a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of crap movies out there. There's just
Jurassic World and all
A
that.
lot.
The franchise
There's a
stuff,
lot.
and-
I can speak to the bad movie fatigue right quick. I want to take y'all back to 2016 for a second.
Oh,
And the low that Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice, like I wasn't just done with superhero movies. I was done with movies in general. I said, screw this. I am reading books now.
It was that bad?
It was, I'm like, is everything I know a lie? Does Batman suck? Is Batman not actually cool? I was having an existential crisis. But you know what?
You're like, well, like
Civil War
Robin.
happened. I'm like, we're so back. Spider-Man's the greatest character of all time. Let's go, Team Cat, baby. So yeah, it's definitely bad movie fatigue. It was not super
Yeah.
fatigue at all.
And I feel like, yeah, because you know it's weird with the whole superhero movie fatigue. It's this never ending cycle. When a bad Marvel movie or like a universally bad Marvel movie or a DC movie comes out, it's, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of superhero movies. They suck. And then when when something like TMNT Mutant Mayhem or No Way Home comes out, or even Guardians of the Galaxy, everyone's like, "Oh my God, we're so back! It's amazing." No one even mentions superhero fatigue, and it drives me crazy. No one's consistent with it. But this is,
Well-
my experiences on Twitter talking there. But
That's
I
fine.
feel like you're gonna have you're gonna have those underwhelming movies. Like, not every single superhero movie is going to hit like Avengers Endgame. And I've always felt that like there's definitely oversaturation. I agree with everyone. Like when it comes to Marvel, and I think that oversaturation began when the TV shows started pumping out, because
Yes.
Disney's Marvel was so new to TV in general. All they knew is how to make movies. I felt like if they would have just kept making movies, it would have been fine. But it does make a little bit more sense to pivot towards television in order to have like introducing new characters like Moon Knight or She-Hulk or Miss Marvel or what have you. So it's like it makes sense for them to pivot to television, but I feel like they don't know how to make TV, because we're running into the same issues where it's like 6 episodes. It's like it's like a movie split into 6 parts, and it's very confusing. And like you were saying, Leo, with your mom, was like, "Oh, like, is there a new Marvel movie coming out every week?" The fact that she didn't know that there are TV shows, and like she's just assuming that they're, like, oh, the next Moon Knight, whatever is coming out. Like, Marvel was just ramping it up, and there's like the quality and the quantity side, but there's definitely oversaturation. But it's like I feel like when people just expect every Marvel movie nowadays, you really can't expect every Marvel movie to be as good as or as polished as what they used to be, because they're like splitting their team into Marvel Television, and now you have the movie side. So it's like, okay, they have to manage a new well-oiled machine, and I don't know.
Blown too close to the sun is what it sounds like.
Yeah, no,
You're doing too
seriously,
much.
it really is. It is.
I really quick wanted to piggyback off that. Also, big franchises are not just copying Marvel in the universe formula, but they're actual movies. Like, did y'all see Transformers: Rise of the Beast? They literally have an in-game moment in that movie where both Optimus and both of the Primes, Optimus and Optimal, both get on the mountain, and they're like, "All right, Autobots, roll out!" And it's like the whole team comes up. There's like this giant battle. I'm like, this is literally Avengers Endgame.
Even
Like
Star Wars: Rise of
style.
Skywalker, they kind of have their own Avengers thing. I was like, okay, we won't talk about that, but yeah, that's another good example. No, that's very true. That is very true.
I'd give Transformers a slight like I don't get too much on them about that, because they've done that before, just in animation as well. What have you?
Look, at least it was an accomplishing movie. That's rare for Transformers,
Rise of the Beast was tight. Listen, I ain't complaining.
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
Let me not be the Michael Bay defender here.
Listen,
I love Michael Bay. I love me some
Look,
Michael Bay.
my boy gave me 2 good Transformers movies, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Cliff, there's been like 10 of those things by now.
Oh, I know. And I still love those 2 movies. Those 2 specific movies he gave me. But but yeah, like even with like Ninja Turtles, and just to bring it back full circle to animation. Y'all remember that what was it, TMNT Forever, where we just got the greatest hits of every Ninja Turtles like team? It was the 2003 version, but like they were going through the multiverse essentially.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
On TV. So like even then, again, another lightning in a bottle moment. Like, we've seen this done before superbly. I think it's more so just literally just I think it's also just oversaturation, just how many times we get it now. Like, it doesn't feel as special as it used to.
And I think that's why animation feels so special. Yeah. Because it's like we don't get as many, like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you guys off. Like, I think Cliff makes a really good point where it's like we're talking about oversaturation, the live action side, but when it comes to animation for superhero content or like stories to tell, they're far and few in between, but they're so freaking good. We don't have like a ramp of like all these animated projects coming out. It's like, hey, like, I have an idea for this. Let's go ahead and do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, boom, we get X-Men 97. I don't think anyone expected that show or even Invincible. I still haven't watched Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles yet, the new thing on Paramount, but at least between X-Men and Invincible and even Batman Cape Crusader, I don't think people expected those to do so well, because it's like animation, people kind of just write off. It's like, oh, well, that's for kids, you know? So it's like people don't take it seriously to begin with. And then we end up getting like some of like the best stories told through animation.
Yeah, I think what makes animation stand out though is like, again, what I said at the top of the show, right? It's the closest we get to actual comic books, whether that be, look at the opening scene of X-Men 97, right? And it's like how colorful it is, how powerful they all feel, like how dynamic those shots are. That's something, and I know we rag on the original X-Men movies a lot, but that's just something I don't think they would have ever been able to achieve anyway, regardless of the black leather and the over serious nature of those films. I don't think there was a shot that they would ever make something as dynamic as the opening of X-Men 97. And then we get to the storytelling aspect of superheroes are soap operas. And being on television allows you to lean into that, right? Like the drama of Young Justice, right? Over the course of those first 2 seasons specifically. And like all of that hits, and you can't do that on film. Like look at the Avengers, as much as we love those movies. I was chatting with Brandon about this before, but it's like Avengers Age of Ultron is the only Avengers movie where they're actually the Avengers. And that kind of sucks. As much as I love all of those films, but like the first one, they are bickering and they finally come together with that iconic shot at the end. In Infinity War, they're broken up the entire movie. They're either in space or they're in Wakanda. And Endgame, they're coming back together and they have to go on like this one last ride type of mission. Age of Ultron is the only time from start to finish they're actually the Avengers. And I think that just speaks to the problem with these live action films, is that they don't get those smaller moments, right? Look at a series like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, right? We have a Christmas episode where Martian Manhunter goes to Kent Farm and learns the meaning of Christmas from Clark and his family. And it's like, those are adorable. It makes those moments when they come together to fight Darkseid and they've got each other's back hit so much harder, because through the highs and the lows and the mundane, animation and television in general allows that to happen, right? Even going to live action television, we've spent like think about volume. We spent 13 hours with Daredevil from season 1 alone, which is way more time we spent with Iron Man. And so our connection to Kingpin, to Matt, to Foggy, to Karen, that's why people were so heartbroken when they said, oh yeah, they're not going to be in the new show at first, right? Because we spent like 30 hours with Foggy and Karen, and you're attached to them. They feel like family. And that's something that these live action movies can't really achieve the same way. So I think that's kind of like the biggest difference between animation. It's just time with those characters, develop those stories. Even going back to X-Men 97, right? The highs and lows of Jean being pregnant and then being a clone and the Goblin Queen and all that stuff. That was a lot. And that was in like a 3-episode span. That's something you can't do in an X-Men movie.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's like, you know, there's so many. It's weird when it comes to live action. It's always fun to literally see these characters come to life into the real world. But I mean, as much as I enjoy live action, there's something about animation where like I feel I'm like, yeah, like this is the way it's like almost like meant to be or should be. But again, people just don't take animation seriously, especially, I mean, anime in general, like Japanese anime nowadays is so popular. Like when we were kids, it's like, then we get like live action adaptations of like Pokemon. We recently got a live adaptation for Avatar: The Last Airbender. Again, M. Night tried. He tried.
Listen,
but
I've got my problems with this Netflix show. 1,000 times better than that movie.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's something about, I guess, and I've talked to Mike about this a little bit off air. I've never really understood people's obsession with turning like every animation project into live action. You know, we're supposedly getting like our Naruto live action series. I think, you know, we have One Piece, things of that nature. But I never really understood like why. Like when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, cool, sure. But now it's like, I don't know, something about cartoon just feels more of a natural progression because there's so much more you can do in animation than you can in live action. Like obviously, you know, you have something like the new Lord of the Rings movie that's coming out that's animated, that's coming to theaters, which is, I was blown away when they're like, oh, come to theaters in December. I was like, it's coming to what? Like we're getting an animated film that isn't Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks or Universal coming to theaters. And it's like, are we back? Can we start getting more of like these like animated projects just in theaters, like the way that it was? Like the SpongeBob movies were pretty big. They never come to theaters anymore. But to see something like Lord of the Rings hit animation, I'm like, I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, because it's something I've always wondered. I'm like, man, like what if they made like a Japanese-esque like Game of Thrones or a Lord of the Rings, and now we're getting something just that for Lord of the Rings. I forgot the Japanese studio of animation studio that's doing that, but I was like, oh my god, like this is awesome. So for me, I feel closer to animation than live action, but I'm still trying to figure out what makes it stand out. I'm guessing it's the fact that there's so many amazing shots that you can do in animation that live action, you know, is as amazing as the technology has come along, and for all the amazing projects we've seen, it can never just hit the right mark when it comes, like you were saying, Mike, like that opening scene, or like the opening scene in X-Men 97 and towards the end where Gambit like uses his powers on Wolverine's claws. I was blown away. I was like, okay, I never even thought this was even possible. But it's like, will we even see something like that in live action? And if we did get that, would it look as visually appealing as it would in animation?
It would not.
Could you imagine Channing Tatum hopping on Hugh Jackman's back and he's just like struggling?
Like it would look so weird. And it's like, this animation just has that secret sauce where it's like, I have a crazy idea, and it can definitely work in animation because it's more like your it's like limitless possibilities almost. It's crazy. It's kind of like reading a book, and like I'm not sure if you guys do this or not. Like if I'm reading a book or listening to audiobook, it's like, you know, your imagination is limitless, but when I'm like listening to an audiobook or reading just like a book, I usually imagine characters in some type of animated form. That's just me altogether. I can't picture them in live action. I'm like, oh, that's like where movies come in. You know, it's so weird. But yeah, I think what makes animation stand out is not necessarily the budget. It's just the imagination and the scenarios you're able to portray on screen. Because something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like if we ever get season 3 of the live action, like if we get like the Firebender Master episode between Zuko,
that show is happening. Like it's been renewed for 3 seasons.
Okay.
You're getting
so
in the end.
Yep.
So
yes, it's gotta finish the story.
yes, it is.
That's crazy.
They
greenlit
greenlit it. That's right. I totally forgot about that. But it's like, you know, there's so many like big moments in Avatar. I'm like, how are they going to pull this off in live action? Because there's things in the original show that are just simply too beautiful for live action, at least in my opinion. So it's always interesting to see when like your favorite property is getting a live action adaptation. It's like, okay, well, how are they going to handle this? Like, how is this going to look, you know, live action, quote unquote? So I don't know. There's so many factors, but I think imagination is the biggest standout because there's just so much more you're able to achieve in the drawing room, like digital or hand drawn. or CGI. Yeah.
Go for it.
Sorry for that rant.
Good.
Oh no, because I was gonna say, Christian, I think I have a perfect way to surmise it because I agree with you. The way I look at it is, in especially in relation to comic book adaptations, the transition from comic book art to animation to animated art is seamless. You can exaggerate more. You can actually, I don't want to say copy and paste in this regard, but like, think of your favorite comic. Think of a panel that like just pops into your head. Animation can replicate that, or do something even different and make it just as unique, if not even better. You know, we can get similar color palettes. We can get similar exaggerated limbs and action movements and blah, 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 blah. You know, this is why, you know, things like the Spider-Verse and you know, Mike mentioned Young Justice, you know, like that was one of the reasons that made me want to read comics. I was like, oh, I love how these characters look and are depicted here. Let me go to the source material and see what other artists have done with these, with the lore and with these characters. And with animation, it's one of the, I don't want to say the perfect, but I'm like, it's one of the perfect mediums and art forms to translate a lot of these stories from, both with you know, Japanese animation, American animation, even, you know, this is why we all love Guillermo del Toro, because he's one of the biggest advocates for like animation is just as important as live action, because you can tell similar and if not even better stories in this. So that transition from just page to screen is just, you know, it's like, it's just the perfect evolution. Is like, hey, these two, it's a perfect marriage, you know. This is a perfect couple that just, you know,
it's riding off to the sunset. Yeah.
I was looking for the phrase. I'm like, yes, riding off to the sunset. Like, hey, let's put y'all two together and like we'll see. Okay, that's essentially how it feels.
And to your point, there's so many styles visually you can use in animation. I mean, you can use the traditional hand-drawn, you can use 3D. Spider-Verse went somewhere new with it. I mean, there's all these different forms of animation that are coming out now. Some of them beautifully done. Some of them, you know, we don't like as much as others. Doesn't mean it wasn't cool for them to try. But that ability to be able to like test beyond the limits of just hand-drawn and doing so many different styles. Just recently saw Transformers 1. That one, it was like, okay, the animation style is like way different than Spider-Verse or hand-drawn 2D. It's like so different. So every movie can have its own animation style and really incorporate a comic booky like feel with Spider-Verse, or their own unique style that they like to use. It's really cool, the different mediums of animation we've got, because you look at the year and it's like, okay, between X-Men 97 and something like Wild Robot and Transformers, and that right there is 3 different animation styles completely. Tales of the TMNT, they're just so different and unique, and they have that ability to emulate the art or just slightly emulate it and run with their own thing. It's just great to be able to have different visual styles within animation. And then just anime is its own thing too. I mean, that's a whole other category of animation that can explore different styles. It's nice to have the variety of animation.
For sure.
Reverse as well, because even think of with like live action stuff, like you can take a live action comic book movie and do like, you know, a 6-issue limited series in comic form, and you know, get a really good inker, colors, all this stuff, and like they can replicate and even again improve upon what was done before,
right?
And even when you look at because I know this probably wasn't mentioned in our chat, but like when you look at Pixar and The Incredibles, we all love that movie. It's an animated superhero movie, but like it slaps on all in every aspect of filmmaking, you know, and it's such a great example of telling a story in animation, especially with superheroes. And last thing I'll say, just to make a hot take, I think a lot of us are also all obsessed with seeing these characters in live action, because one, I think we can all like agree, like, yeah, live action is still like it works, it hits for a lot of characters and what have you.
For sure.
But I also blame, our good old classic like live action Scooby Doo's and like Flintstone movies with like John Goodman. Like those are movies that were translated from animation to live action. I'm like, it hits, it works. Like
some of it, yeah.
Like some of it does work. And Mike's just like, no. I just want to say that because like I just
Scooby Doo.
That's say, that we grew up watching Batman and the X-Men, so we're kind of. But no, you said Scooby Doo and
exactly. Hey,
I can't even argue it. You're not wrong.
I forgot
the
about
Hanna-Barbera. They had crossovers. Like they did. Animation again.
Yep.
They cooked. No, but like I think another thing, like you guys were talking about like the limitless possibilities, right? Of like animation. Also, maybe this is because now I'm coming at it from the comic book reader perspective. Animation is the only medium where they actually try to adapt those stories and those characters as much as they possibly can. Like think about Batman as a character who's been in live action for decades, like almost 50 years. Why is the Batman the first movie where this man's a detective? Like his moniker is the world's greatest detective. He's the mascot of Detective Comics. But we only got one movie, and it's the last one where this man is actually being a detective. And so I feel like Batman the Animated Series did that 30 freaking years ago, where it's like, yeah, he's a detective, but also once he's with the Justice League, he's also like this legendary superhero and master fighter. And he's not just solving cases in Gotham City. And so I think that's part of why animation also hits. It allows you to see a different side of these characters, right? One thing I noticed with a lot of X-Men fans, right? They see X-Men 97 and they're like, oh, I didn't know Cyclops was that dude. It's like, no, Cyclops has always been that dude. Those movies were just not.
The movies, The movies really focus on Wolverine. Like everything live action animated for X-Men always focuses on Wolverine. Like Cyclops got kicked to the curb.
Him and Storm, man. Storm too.
Storm
shows up and the Sentinels are like Omega level mutant. I'm like, this is what we've been wanting, man.
Like, give us the forecast. I was like,
that show put Gambit in my like top 5 of like favorite X-Men characters. Like it's crazy.
Gambit is so fire.
Ooh,
we just now getting him in live action.
You're right though, Mike. It is weird how it's like, I guess you can almost say animation is more like animation adaptations are more truer to the core characters than the live action. Because, when it comes to Batman, they just want to see him, beating up bad guys and whatnot. They don't necessarily care about the detection part. And I guess you could kind of sort of see that within Christopher Nolan's like the detection work. It was like kind of there, but it also really wasn't.
He had a supercomputer, and Lucius did half of it.
Yeah,
I love the Dark Knight trilogy, but that's kind of what happened there.
Yeah, it's almost like Lucius was like his like actual Alfred. Like Alfred was there, but like Lucius was like more so Alfred than Alfred was in those movies. But yeah, there's something about like
of that franchise.
Yeah, he was in that franchise. Yeah, I mean the masses, like the general audience, they just want to see Batman or like these superheroes just do cool things. Like they don't necessarily, I mean, I think it's fair to say the general audience doesn't necessarily care about what makes these characters, like what makes Batman what makes Superman or Spider-Man, or what makes Peter Parker Spider-Man. So it's like, I think it's more of a, I guess you could say, comic book accuracy, sure, but I guess more focusing just on the core characteristics of that person. But it's like, like you said.
I sorry not to cut you off. I guess it kind of goes into what is an adaptation again, right? Like the MCU, I love it. It has faults and things that I don't enjoy, but like on the whole, I do love the MCU. But you also have a movie called Age of Ultron, and it is nothing like the comic book that's actually called Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what point, like, it's cool to take those creative liberties, but again, you had a whole generation grow up thinking that Cyclops was whack. And in one attempt of just like doing something accurate with Cyclops, it's like, oh no, he's actually way cooler than we thought. And it's like, what's the point of adapting these characters and these stories if you're not going to do them justice? I mean, looking at My Hero Academia, right? Deku's fighting Shigaraki. We're in the end game of that story. And having read up to that point, seeing that come to life is such an insane experience of like, oh my gosh, this is what Bakugo at full power looks like when he's animated. And it's something that I couldn't even imagine when you read that chapter and you read that story, right? And as a comic book fan, animation gives you that same hit of like seeing Miles, right, and that leap of faith, and the music hits and he goes for it, and like that gets you in the chest because it's like you were saying, true to the character. While that technically isn't something that's from a Spider-Man comic, it is still in essence entirely Spider-Man, going all the way back to when Stan Lee first created that character. That like anybody can be a hero, anybody can wear the mask. It's just a kid doing his best to save his city. And I think that's where animation comes in, where it remembers those core essences and those core moments of those characters. You don't have Batman killing people, you know. You don't have Superman being brooding, you know. You don't have Captain America just being a dick 100% of the time. The Ultimate Captain America is awful, by the way. Like there's always a comic book you can reach to and say it's like that one. But let's not do that. Let's stick to main continuity.
They all kind of jerks to begin with, but
Yeah.
Like that's one thing I've noticed too is like whenever we want to make an excuse, like what happened in comic book number 5 of Avengers in this random multiverse, it's like let's stop that. Come on, let's be real.
Yeah, it's like they pull fragments from the live action and make their own movie out of it instead of just adapting the actual story arc.
Yeah.
To that point, I think though it is some of those live action limitations, right? That they say, well, maybe in live action it would look a little goofy, so we're gonna change things up. And then I think also the popularity of Wolverine kind of just blended with Jackman's performance. They're like, we're gonna just make X2 and he's gonna be like the center of it, and we're gonna just keep on going and going and going. And that was selling tickets for them because when they got to First Class, box office wise, that did not do as good as the rest of the films. They had to say, we gotta get Jackman back. They really are relying on that Wolverine.
I think would help.
First Class was a great movie, though.
It's so good. So good. I think it's the most underrated X-Men movie.
I wonder, though, like, again, making Wolverine the focal point isn't my issue. It's that you made everybody else worse characters. It's like Cyclops doesn't, like, Cyclops can be the leader. But everybody's favorite Ninja Turtle is generally like Raphael, right? Usually.
Oh, I thought it was Leonardo.
I thought it was Donnie.
I thought it was Leo.
On average, it's probably is Donatello, but like Raphael's the loudest. my point being is that you don't need to make Leonardo ass to prop up Raphael or Donatello. Is my point.
I thought everyone liked Leo more. I'm just saying.
Leo's my least favorite. I love all.
Leo's a good one.
Let us know if y'all want us to talk about Ninja Turtle movies.
Let us know in the comments. I mean, we're gonna be here all the time. We can talk Turtles one day. But so we had an ultimatum on the agenda. I want your guys' thoughts, Leo. Animation or live action for your superheroes? What would you prefer?
I mean, I feel like this is an unfair question because it's just like with animation, there's just less limitations. There's more visual mediums. There's better ways to adapt the comics. You got to go animation, right? I mean, I love the MCU. I love it, man. Love it. But I mean, I can't just say, okay, I love the MCU so much that I don't want Invincible or X-Men 97 or like, you know what I mean? Like animation, Spider-Verse is one of my favorite movies of all time now. Like, I can't say live action. I got to go animation and anime.
That's fair. Yeah. Does anybody object that this is such an
obvious
answer?
I do not.
Mean, I could have said.
Cliff's looking a little.
I'll play devil's advocate.
Perplexed.
Okay. I was going to, but I was like,
devil's advocate, hit us.
Because like I don't like putting two bad joints against each other, for real. Like honestly, but because again, like one of my. It might be animation. I don't know, because like when I think back of like why I grew up and like why I now read comic books and you know, and what have you, I'm just like I grew up watching majority cartoons. Like I have like the VHS tapes and seen these movies in theaters, but like most of the time throughout the week it was whatever cartoon was on. You know, whatever animated show was dropping. Like the whole reason I love Blue Beetle and whatnot is because I watched Young Justice weekly when it dropped. Yeah. You know, I was there in Saturday morning or when it was like Friday night. And then Love that reference. Yeah, I was there from Friday, and then when they moved it to Saturday, and even looking like Green Lantern in the animated series and all that stuff, and just like, yeah, a lot of us love these characters because we watched them in animated form. Like, it's our first full exposure to these characters. So
You are a poor devil's advocate, by the way.
I'm a terrible person because again, y'all saw me turn around. I was looking at my Blu-ray case. And I was just like, "Which one is this?"
It's like,
I don't know. Like I gave support to animation. I'm a terrible lawyer. I'm a terrible lawyer.
I guess to also play devil's advocate a little bit, I think live action can work in television. I think part of it is movies. Is that you just have limited amount of space, right? Like going back to the Arrowverse, right? We can talk about the writing in the Arrowverse all the live long day, but one thing that I loved about the Arrowverse is that one thing I loved about the Arrowverse.
They did it before the MCU. We got 5 crossovers before.
Seriously, but that's my point, right? We had a crossover every year, and the quality of the crossover is whatever. That's subjective, but like, at the end of it, I did feel like Barry and Oliver were actually like really close friends. And that's something that, as much as I love the Avengers, by the time you get to Civil War, it's like they're broken up. It's like, did you guys like each other in the first place? Like, I don't know. Because like
it.
Right. So it's like Cap and Tony's relationship needed like 4 more movies probably to marinate. But because these are movies, we ain't got time for that. We got to get Civil War in, And it's like live action can't do that. Live action probably just, and that's why the DCU is going to be interesting, right? And the future of the MCU is like we're mixing TV in more. So like having smaller adventures, street level adventures, right? With Daredevil and Spider-Man and stuff like that. Maybe that can build that same kind of continuity that animation did, right? Where it's like there's an episode of Superman the Animated Series where Batgirl and Supergirl team up. Bruce and Clark aren't even in it. And it's like, those are the moments that we don't get in live action, mainly because they're movies, but live action TV could do it. Like the Arrowverse did that, and the Netflix shows did that. Yeah. Again, varying degrees of success, but it is possible in live action. It just probably needs to move to a TV format. And I think that's really my takeaway, is that it's not necessarily animation's 1,000 times better, but animation usually is like serialized storytelling on television. And I think that probably is the secret sauce that the live action things need to take into account.
You get more time to breathe with those characters, and you can that's true. That's very true. I forgot about that girl. And what's up?
It's the 1-to-1 translation again. Again, comics, we read these either monthly or we get a trade and we take our own time with it. We go chapter by chapter, et cetera, where so with animation and TV it's just another perfect and like seamless transition, whereas movies we only got
2 hours,
max,
maybe
probably 3 hours. 2 hours, 2 hours and 30 minutes on a more traditional route.
Maybe that 3 hours. You're like
time is very compressed.
But that's going back to what Cliff's whole point was at the top of the show, right? Of like the MCU being like phase 1 just being one mini series. That's why that hits different than it does now, because it's like it was a tight Avengers saga. Basically, it's like these are the Avengers. This is what happens when they team up. They fight a villain. The end, and you're kind of in, you're out. It's self-contained. Whereas looking at what the DCEU tried to do, where it was just all over the place, or Sony tried to tell a villain verse, but every villain is actually secretly the hero of their own story. And then you have the MCU now, where it's like, what was that?
Can I ask a question then? Since you mentioned the DCU and we're mentioning episodic stuff. Just for fun, everybody can answer this. Are we saying we should have just let a 5-film Justice League franchise happen?
Maybe.
And just
maybe they should have just let Snyder write it out, Like in hindsight is always 2020.
Reading them ideas, I don't know. I'm kind of glad they pulled the plug.
Like, as opposed to whatever we got, is like, you know what? Maybe just let the man thug it out, and we'll go from there.
You mean you didn't want Black Adam to show up and change the course of the DC universe?
I was so pissed when that movie came out.
He did change.
Shout out. He did. He ended it. He ended that.
James Gunn came along and said, "Yeah, we got to clean up." because of that. So yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that was
to wrap up the superhero fatigue, though. That all comes down to it. One thing
Mhm.
that Kevin Feige has gone on record and said is like he needs a healthy DCU to have a healthy MCU. Because guess what? As a general audience and just a fan, it's like, yeah, if those DCU movies really made it tough on the MCU. Like the MCU had to work double time to keep people interested in superheroes. You need them all to work a little bit, you know? Like you
Yeah,
can't just
that's
have
true.
4 bad franchises run at the same time. You're gonna get sick, and it's gonna kind of exacerbate that.
Yeah, a little bit of healthy competition never hurt anyone, like at all. Like you want all aspects of this medium or this genre, no matter if it's animation or live action. You want it, you want everyone to bring something new to the table, not just produce cow manure.
Yeah, because think about it like this: we had Quantumania, then Shazam 2, then Black Adam. What
That was terrible.
Back to back, dude. Like,
That was a
that's
terrible
just
run.
like a pretty bad run.
Yeah.
there. And if you got both of them doing bad,
People were so excited for
general
Shazam
audiences
too.
don't even. General audiences were like, "Congrats, Kevin Feige on Blue Beetle," and he's like, "I mean, that's not Marvel, but thanks." I mean, people don't know,
like just the disrespect to Jaime and Sholo altogether, people.
Seriously.
The amount of people who I know in my personal life that were mad when Wonder Woman wasn't in Endgame was so funny to me. And I'm just like, they were like, I know Superman's dead, but like, where's Wonder Woman and Batman? They ain't show up to fight Thanos. And I'm just like, one, Superman was resurrected like 2 years ago. You clearly didn't watch Justice League anyway. But 2, what do you think's been going on here?
I think that's just people not even really paying attention to what's going on. They just think all superhero movies are Marvel because they've dominated for so long. And it's like, that's crazy to think about. Oh my God. I don't even know if I know anyone like that.
Oh, I know plenty. Like, and to be fair, I feel like also movies prior to MCU, it's not like we're all very big on, like, none of us pays attention to those logos that pop up before the movie starts. Like we know the Marvel one now because of how many movies there have been. But think about it, beforehand, a lot of general people are just like, oh, okay, DC. We're just like, oh, Superman, cool.
Yeah.
Superman Returns. All right. Elektra, Fantastic Four.
Daredevil.
We don't.
That's the benefit of that era too, though, right? Is that since none of them were connected, you just went in and you just said, "I'm going to watch a Fantastic Four movie."
Yeah.
And if it's good or bad, it is what it is. But like now, you actually have to keep up. Like Leo said earlier, in Phase 1, you didn't have the homework. You just watched Iron Man and you enjoyed it. Or the Avengers, it was easy for you to catch on. You just watched it and enjoyed it. Everything post Phase 3, because Phase 3 was again the series finale of that era of Marvel. It's like, oh, okay, I need to watch WandaVision to know who Monica is. I need to watch Miss Marvel to understand who Kamala is. And then in the Marvels, I need to watch Captain Marvel 1 and Avengers Endgame to understand how Carol got here. And there's a post-credit scene connected to Hawkeye of all things. So I guess I need to know what Hawkeye is about. So I know who Kate Bishop is. And like, that's a lot for a person who thinks Wonder Woman should have been in Endgame.
It's all a ploy for Disney to be like, hey, we need your Disney Plus subscription. So we're going to make this as connected as possible, even though they said that they weren't going to. But it's like, yeah, like you basically have to watch Miss Marvel to know the Marvels because Kamala Khan is like, the forefront in that. So it's like, yeah, you have to subscribe to Disney Plus, watch that 6 episode TV show, and then give us more money by go see the movie.
Well.
Yeah,
right.
It's all marketing.
Well.
It really is. Yeah. It's
none
crazy.
of us really like Hawkeye. Let's be honest here. No, none of us really care about Hawkeye.
The show or
because the character.
I like the show, but
Let me specific Clint. Let's say Clint. I'll say that much because I know.
Clint. Yeah.
Haley Steinfeld team in that iteration is just really good. It's just fantastic.
Clint's not the reason why we watch Hawkeye.
We're cooking Clint. We're cooking Clint like this. We just cook.
I love Jeremy Renner, but I'm like, it's just a guy
Sorry,
with a bow. It's
Jeremy
fine.
All right, we got Green Arrow. We had 9 seasons with Green Arrow, sir. Like
that is true.
We've seen how great you can be.
Yeah.
Like we, but and I guess I got a question for y'all. If you could, to go back to the whole conversation, if you could pick either a movie or TV show that you would recommend to someone to watch to really explain, like, oh, this is why we all agree, and like why animation is one of the strongest art forms to tell comic book stories? What would it be? Again, one movie and one show, like just
Does
whatever
it have
just
to be
comes to
comic
mind.
books related or no?
No.
Okay.
I mean, that's what this podcast is about, Christian. Stay on brand.
Right. I was like, well, hold on. So one animated show, one
Because like
movie?
technically Ben 10 is a superhero. Like
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
true.
saying that's my
Yeah.
choice, but I'm just like it's an
Yeah.
option.
You're not wrong. You're not
There.
wrong.
I'm not gonna fight
Right?
you on Ben Tennyson.
Ben Tennyson.
I'm gonna go classic and old school. It's weird to say that this is classic and old school now. I'm gonna go Justice League Unlimited.
Dang,
That's
that
my
made me feel
pick.
old.
I know, right? Because like saying old school was like, yeah, that show's like 20 years old now. So yeah, Justice League Unlimited.
He close to 30 people. We in there.
Well, JW was in 2001 ish. So Batman is 30 for sure. And you said a live action show,
Or no, just either a show and a movie, just in general. It doesn't
And-
have to be animated
Yeah,
specifically, I guess.
I'm gonna piggyback off of you then and just steal the Incredibles because Incredibles like
It's a
my
great
favorite
answer.
movie of all time. So there you go.
I'm gonna say for TV, I'm gonna go with the Teen Titans, not Teen Titans Go. I can't say Teen Titans Go isn't bad. It's just I never really watched it, but the original Teen Titans animated. For movies, that is tough. I'm trying to think. I would say does it have the like theatrical release or no?
No.
I would
Nope.
probably
I guess they just
say
animate.
The Dark Knight Returns
Ooh,
for a
that's a
movie.
banger.
It's a better depiction of Batman v Superman we've ever got.
I mean, that's the Batman v Superman got its inspiration.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's another conversation. How I missed the point of them being old friends, and that's why that
Mhm.
break hurts instead of just being guys who don't know each other. But anyway, Leo, who are your choices?
Oh, I'm going super generic. I'm going Into the Spider-Verse. Got to go with the Spider-Man property. And then for show, I'll go to original X-Men animated.
That's
Oh, yeah.
interesting. Spectacular Spider-Man was right there. I was like, I'm gonna let Leo
I
have
thought
that
about
one.
doing
Didn't
Spectacular
close it.
Spider-Man, but I
I
didn't
was
want people
gonna,
to
I
get
was gonna say
disappointed.
spectacular, but I was just like that you can hang on by a cliff.
Yeah, thread. Yeah, I almost said it, but yeah.
I was almost gonna go 90s Spider-Man series too. That was
I thought
so
about
damn
that
good.
too.
But
But kids
again,
today, they're like,
I
"What
need
is
some more.
this? Why is the animation weird?"
I don't think that animation is weird.
No,
I
I'm
wouldn't-
saying kids today will probably think that it is.
Oh,
since they're not-
spectacular! You think?
No, 90s Spider-Man. I feel like
Peter
they
is
would-
built like a house.
He was.
That man is massive. And I'm like, you know what? I respect it. That's a completely different from any version of Spider-Man I've ever seen. But like, you know what? He's a
Pete
grown
is
man. I
built.
get it.
Yeah, I was like, this man is
Grown.
built, dog.
This man's like in his 40s. I was like, whoa.
When he was chasing after
Just-
Shocker, I was
yeah.
like, yeah, Shocker running.
Yeah.
Shocker!
Shocker!
I'll follow you to the ends of the earth.
Oh my
I
god,
got
just
it.
A+ voice acting, dude.
Oh,
10 out of 10. Cliff, what's yours?
Well, Young Justice, always and forever.
mm.
That's again that I will argue that probably is the true show that made me like, oh yeah, I'm a DC diehard for real. And I guess animated, I'm going to go Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, or Batman: Mask of the
Oh, yeah.
Phantasm, if you will.
It's a good
Both
one.
of those are
great.
incredible movies.
Yeah.
I still say
Clearly, I
Phantasm
like
is the best
Trauma.
Batman.
Mask of Phantasm is fantastic. Yeah.
Mhm.
Incredibly
10.
fantastic.
Banger.
Banger. Guys, this has been an incredible conversation and episode. Love the inaugural episode of Assembled. Leah, I'm tossing this back up to you. Was there any closing thoughts that you had that you want to talk about before we dive into some of these comments?
Well, I thought it was a great conversation as usual with you guys, man. I mean, listen, there's so many animated properties to binge, to watch, to reminisce about. There's so much in the world of animation that, man, I feel like I got to get off of here and go watch some Teen Titans. Like, I'm like, man, I'm ready to pull in the archives and watch some more animation. But
Yeah.
fantastic conversation as always, gentlemen.
Heck yeah. We'll be back in like what, 2 weeks? That's what the plan is.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
Weekly?
Let's do every
Yeah.
other week. Yeah.
Hang out here, talk some superheroes. We're gonna address some comments. First comment before we even went live: superhero isn't a genre; it's a medium of storytelling that encompasses all genres. This is coming from Action Packed. I want your guys' thoughts on that because I think I disagree, but I want to get the panel's opinions.
I disagree that it isn't a genre because, like, you know, we've talked about with Marvel has like indirectly made it its own genre. Like, not even just talking Marvel and DC. Like, we had movies like Hancock or even Kick-Ass, where it's like those are like superhero genre. Like, it definitely is its own thing. Like, I guess you can maybe call it like a subgenre of like maybe sci-fi and action pack or like fantasy almost like conglomerate between those, because so many movies today encompass like a crap ton of genres in their films. But I definitely feel like I think it's both. I think it is a medium for storytelling, but I also feel like it's a genre in and of itself. Because when I tell someone, like, they're like, oh, like, hey, what's Umbrella Academy about, or what's Doom Patrol about? I'm like, oh, it's a superhero genre, or like a superhero TV show. They're like, oh, okay. They have a general idea in their head of what it's going to be about. It's like, okay, you know, people with powers are going to be beating up some type of bad guy, or, you know, going through some type of trials and tribulations, you know, with them either discovering their powers or learning how to become something greater than of themselves. If that makes sense, I don't know.
I mean, I think that's perfectly stated, because when you talk about a superhero genre, people know what to expect. And like you said,
Yeah.
Marvel pretty much popularized. And also, hey, tell the suits up top that they definitely don't think that superhero movies aren't a genre. Like, they know superhero is in right now. Superhero is the current Westerns. So they're what sells. They are the big... They're the big thing, the big boom. I mean, we looks like maybe anime or video games might be the next one, but we're currently in that superhero boom. And when you tell people, like you were saying, Christian, when you tell people it's a superhero movie or show or animated TV show or TV series, you then know people know what to expect based off of that. I do think you can take elements of superheroes and blend it across all genres, but I do think it's its own genre, especially where we're at now.
Yeah, 1,000%.
I think it's at least like a subgenre, I guess, because like you're right in that case. Like when I think of a medium, right? Like you just mentioned anime, right? Anime to me, there are slice of life, there's shonen, there's romance, you know, there's BL. There's so many different types of genres that are inside anime, where anime is just Japanese animation. That's the medium, right? Whereas superhero, I think we can boil every single superhero project down to one distilled thing, right? You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's good versus evil. It's a caped or masked vigilante or hero fighting a threat, whether it's to their community, to the world, to the universe. It's always going to be that push and pull of dark and light. And I think that's why superhero is a genre, because whether it's Deadpool and Wolverine, or it's Spider-Man, or it's Superman, the movie, it's going to be good versus evil, mainly caped hero versus dastardly villain, which is why I would label it as a genre and not a medium. Whereas a medium, like if a medium is anime, again, it's like Kaguya-sama has nothing in common with Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, but like there's always at least one through line from every superhero movie, from Watchmen all the way to Spider-Man No Way Home, you know? So I think that's where I would land on that. Cliff, did you have anything on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's this is one of those matters where it's specific. It's indicative of like the idea of a cultural language. You know, it's yes, like y'all see these behind me. These are Power Rangers. They're superheroes, but I wouldn't classify them as, oh, it's a superhero story. Like, yes, but it goes into, you know, again, like what culture, what the zeitgeist, and just how we all communally talk about superhero stories and whatnot, because they're also just, you know, just new versions of Greek, you know, mythology and storytelling, you know,
Greek mythos,
et cetera, and all that jazz. But the way we classify, you know, like My Hero, it's a superhero show. Yes, it's a shonen technically, and it has different subgenres within it, but a lot of us most of the time classify as it's the usual superhero stuff you see. Whereas
Yep.
your tokusatsu things, your Power Rangers, your Ben 10s, if you will, like those are all superhero related things, but we also don't really say like, oh, it's another. We don't classify as a superhero genre, if that makes sense. Again, it's like that Urban Dictionary thing. Like, yes, in terms of like Webster's Dictionary, there's a literal meaning to these things, but also culturally, it's used. It's used interchangeably. It's integrated in a special way, in like specific ways, in how we talk about these things.
Yeah, for sure. Another comment here we have from Solomon Holmes. Eternals 2 is canceled. Would love to see an animated Eternals. How do we think about
Should have
that?
always been a TV show.
Ooh.
I would love to see it as an animated series.
I would
I mean,
too.
that would
That would be
awesome.
amazing.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be a
Yeah.
perfect follow up.
That'd be a great way
We're
for it to
talking about
live
10
on.
plus characters here as well. That they need the time for us to fully care about them. Like, show me why Druig is a very interesting character. Show me why Cersei. Show me why Icarus decided to double cross his team at the end of this movie. Again, I think Eternals is a great example of like one of those comic book adaptations that should have been either live action or animated in a TV format to some capacity.
Yeah, I fully agree. As somebody who did not enjoy the Eternals movie, one of my complaints was you introduced all these characters and they all are interesting, but they don't have enough time to ever explore it fully. Like we had like 4 different time jumps in Eternals 1 across like
Loved
hundreds
it.
of years. But I'm like, I'd like to have one season to go off of Cliff's point, like one season in one era, and the next season in another era.
Yeah, especially as a follow-up, I think that works a lot because then you can go to the past a bit, you can come forward, but you have so much time to work with there. By the way, hey Solomon and Action Pack, thanks for dropping through the stream and leaving some comments. Thank you.
You also can get more character interactions. Like, did any of these people run into Cap back in World War II?
Yeah.
Did they run into some Black Panther before T'Challa and T'Chaka or everything? Like, you just get more time to actually get those crossovers and those character interactions that we all come here for.
For sure. Guys, I think that addresses all the major questions and comments we had. Everything else was kind of topical in what we were saying. Like me ranting about BVS is just the Zack Snyder experience, which for me is true. That's why I stopped. I gave up. I learned my lesson like 10 years ago.
I think we all did.
Warner Brothers definitely did. Got him. Oh man, this has been fun. Christian, what you got cooking? Where can the folks find you? This has been a blast.
Oh boy, thank you so much for having me and everyone else on. This was a lot of fun. You can find my work over at Film Optics. That is Optics with an X, right down below that way, or right in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. We are audio only podcast. We release episodes weekly, so we're going to be covering films coming up such as Blink Twice, that is Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut, and as well as Umbrella Academy season 4. So those are like our 2 new episodes that you can look forward to. You can also check out our Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes review and our Alien Romulus spoiler-free review, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, we're audio only. But yeah, those are just a few things we have going on. And yeah, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Film Optics again. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Epic. You can find me at Novice Cinephile, and the Chatter After podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you give us a like on YouTube and on the podcast platforms. Give us the 5-star rating and the reviews. That's going to be super helpful, especially for this show. We're going to have a lot of other superhero content for you guys, so make sure you check that out. Cliff, what about you? Where can people find you and the stuff you're working on?
You can find me on Twitter and on Letterboxd at Cliff and La La Land. Especially on Letterboxd, I'm going through a full Godzilla rewatch thanks to -1. And you can find me in another place, but make sure you follow me on Twitter because I am getting back into YouTube reviews. I should have one coming out within like the next couple weeks or so. So, we getting back into that bag a little bit. But yeah, make sure you follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd. That's where I'll like share when those videos or when I make those videos go live and whatnot. Because I just saw Dee last night, and I think that's going to be one of the first movies that I talk about. Fun movie, like it hits a little too close to home. Like it's set in 2008. And,
our main
character's transitioning from 8th grade to middle school. So I'm just like, you get a little too close. Like, I've worn some of these clothes. I've been in these situations.
That's it.
It's way too close.
Oh God, are we becoming 80s nostalgia? Is that how old we are now? Where it's like
my Letterboxd review of this real quick was just like, we've got to the point where they're making coming of age stories about my life. Like it's weird.
It's so
weird now.
It was gonna happen eventually. I just never thought it was this soon.
Yeah, watch when y'all watch this movie. They're like, and this isn't even like spoilers and what have you, but like there's an outfit that one of the characters wear. It's like it's a black short sleeve, undershirt, Reebok sneakers, and then just like y'all remember like the long shorts.
The long, sweat shorts.
He wears that in the movie, and I'm just like, I've had every variation of this exact outfit for the summers. Like my parents
used in my closet.
Like I can pull out these Reeboks right now. Like I just need a fitted cap and I'm good. Like this is it. And what happened?
I don't know how I feel about it. It might break me.
Right? Like
I almost wanted to cry. Like.
Is it foreign language
references? In some moments, like it's in English and
Is it Chinese
or
Korean?
I want to say Mandarin or no, it's probably Chinese or Mandarin because the characters are Taiwanese.
Okay.
Yeah, Chinese.
So and with their history, chances are it's probably Chinese and whatnot. But they do both. It's one of those stories. Taiwanese American immigrant family. Everyone, the kids can speak English and all that stuff, yada yada.
Gotcha.
Full details and whatnot. But yeah, check me out on Cliff and La La Land on Twitter and Letterboxd because I will make that announcement when that DD review drops. So we back in here, baby. I'm coming. I'm coming to y'all. Like we coming back here.
Let's
back.
Go right. So
Let's
excited.
Go.
Cliff's reviews are always great. Leo, you last up. Sign us out. Where can people find you? What's happening?
Well, guys, if you're watching this live, you're on the Geekly Goods channel. Come on back, guys. We've got some content coming up this week, including Only Murders in the Building, Season 4. We will have a review for that out this week. And more content in store as well. Terminator Zero is coming out later this week as well. So we will have a review up for that, as well as reaction videos and Marvel content dropping all throughout the week, y'all. So subscribe to the channel. And, y'all, this was a great stream. We'll be doing one in the next couple of weeks. So tune in because we'll be talking superhero genre, different topics on the superhero genre. So come on back, y'all. We'll see you in a couple weeks. I think
you are muted.
Yep.
Wouldn't have been a stream with me on here if I wasn't muted at least once. I swear to God. Guys, if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, don't miss a thing. Make sure you check us out on the podcast feed, on Thermopolitics, on the chatter after. It's going to be a blast. We're going to have a revolving door of guests as well. Let us know what you want us to talk about in the comments on Twitter, and we can add that to our agenda. Again, we're going to be here every 2 weeks, so give us what you want us to talk about. We'll make sure we cover it because we're not going to be here every other day. So we want to make sure we're addressing your comments and all that stuff as well. So stay on top of that. And as always, go beyond. Plus Ultra.
Plus Ultra.
Power. Peace.